After studying this module, you shall be able to know about the scene and importance of gender equality and justice, the gender related crimes and the affecting factors, the status of strategy implementation by various governing authorities. Introduction. Gender refers to the societal variance and relations between men and women which are learned and fluctuate extensively among societies and cultures and exchange over time. The word gender does not replace the term sex anyhow, which refers exclusively to biological differences between men and women. Conversely, gender equality can be termed as the parity between men and women, which necessitates the thought that all human beings, both men and women, are at liberty to develop their personal capacities and make choices deprived of the restrictions set by labels, skewed genders, roles, and partialities. Gender equality further implies that the different behavior, ambition, and need of women and men are considered, appreciated, and preferred equally. It does not mean that women and men have to turn out to be the same, but that their civil liberties, responsibilities, and occasions will not be contingent on whether they are born male or female. Gender impartiality equitably means impartial treatment for women and men consistent with their respective needs. This may embrace equal treatment or maybe treatment that is not the same but which is considered equal in terms of right, benefits, responsibilities, and opportunities. Gender justice suggests identical behavior and unbiased importance of the genders. Therefore, gender equality is a fundamental human right that is assured by the universal and regional treaties, conventions, and national legislation. Gender justice can be elaborated as the safeguard and promotion of civil, political, economic, and social rights on the basis of gender equality. It demands taking a gender perception on the civil liberties themselves, as well as the valuation of assets and impediments to the gratification of these rights for women, men, girls, and boys, and implementing gender sensitive policies for protecting and promoting them. Incorporation of gender justice into liability mechanism has thus far emphasized two key objectives. Firstly, the recognizing and pursuing justice for women experiences of sexual violence during conflict, and secondly, the securing increased representation of women in arenas of policy making and decision making on post conflict issues, as well as the provisional justice mechanisms themselves. Gender inequality is profoundly embedded in social, political, and economic institutions, and often power relations are so entrenched they seem novel. A gender perception is a fundamental tool that makes new ways of seeing the same reality. Time and again, gender equality in diversified organizations is understood as increasing women's participation to match that of men. In gender analysis, changes in everyday attitudes, subjective opinions, and private spaces such as the homes are as important as the changes that must be sought in comprehensive structures such as organizations, the states, and the workplace, and are seen as a fundamental aspect of social transformation. It is an imperative, therefore, to analyze behavior, power relations, and decision makings in couples, families, communities, and organizations. It is also important to analyze the factors which contribute to the modus operandi of both private and public spheres. Now, contemporaneous situations of gender equality. Gender justice necessitates that nobody should be anticipated to carry greater inclusive embraces or enjoy complete, less significant welfares than others, lacking due to respiration merely because of their gender. The principle of gender justice that is capable of accounting for cases where the injustice lies at the very deep level of determining agency by shaping individual. At the same time, the principle explains at least some of the gender injustice of the entire ranging of examples given so far are violence against women, economic and legal discrimination, domestic exploitation, and the gendered division of labor. A gendered division of labor, even when it burdens women and men in a similar way, is unwarranted if it is established in a social perspective that recommends gender standards that make particular choices inexpensive for women and other choices inexpensive for men. The pressure such norms put on people cast doubt on individuals' freedom to choose certain valuable elements from the lifestyle of the other gender. It is the severe truth that women have been neglected in every society for centuries, and in India this is no exception. The mockery lies in fact that in a country where the women are ventured as Ma Shakti, the atrocities are committed against her in all societies of life. She is being regarded as an article of trade or as a slave. She is not robbed of her self respect and pride outside her house, but she also faces cruelty and other atrocities within the four walls of her house. They are considered as an article of male sex enjoyment and reproduction of children. They are purgantly considered as subjugated part of the society. Women are discriminated at twofold stages. Firstly, they agonize because of their gender, and secondly, due to poverty. Women are deprived of economic sources and are dependent on men for their living. Women's works are often restricted to domestic scope where she had to do all household works which are neither recognized or paid. In modern times, many women are coming out to do work but have to bear the twofold responsibility. One, she has to work where she is employed, and other, she has to do all the household works. She is last to be considered and first to be stacked, as she is considered to be less productive than her corresponding person. Her overall status in the family and in society has been low and unrecognized. There is cumulative substantiation that much gender bias functions at the unconscious and hence not directly controllable level. Even individuals who consciously reject gender norms tend to unconsciously evaluate women and men according to different criteria and to expect members of each gender to do well in those respects that are conventionally associated with their gender. This is called implicit bias. It is not very hard to realize the injustice of implicit bias and stereotype imitation and of the resultant differential treatment of women and men as they invite unjustified discrimination. Additionally, the imposition of different standards of evaluation of performance on women and men justifies limits the scope of occupational choice or at least the equality of access for some. A woman with warts who wishes to rise to the top of her profession will have to pay higher material costs than she would have she been a man. She is the key caregiver in her family and so either needs to work harder generally or else she needs to stand social expectations and to overcome habit in order to transfer her care duties to somebody else. Cost for women of having a successful career is often prohibitive and hence they enjoy lesser substantial freedom of choice in their respect than men do. Indeed, much of the feminist work on the justice reflects this fact, and an analytically powerful way to understand gender itself is by reference to its essential connection to social advantage or disadvantage. Now, gender related crimes. The discrimination or subordination of one gender by another is a global issue that negatively affects the social, political, and economic development of every country in the world. In many civilizations, even before birth, a boy child is cherished more than a girl child. The World Bank estimates gender selective infanticides accounts for 1.56 million lost girls. At schools, the number of girls completing primary and secondary education is still far below the number of boys. Many girls are forced into early marriages every year. These girls are at far more risk of dropping out of school, facing dangerous problems in pregnancy and childbirth, and suffering from domestic violence. Even when women do complete school, they are still possibly to be paid less than men and hold jobs more apprehensive than those of men, and are far less expected to hold management positions. According to the UN, for women aged between 15 to 44, activities of violence reasons more death and debility than cancer, malaria, traffic accidents, and war. A woman probabilities of representing her community in politics and addressing these inequalities are marginal. In some societies, if a woman's husband dies, she is deprived of the right to become heir of the property. These particulars amount to the methodological and underhand discrimination of women and girls. The General Assembly on November 7, 1967 adopted a declaration on the elimination of discrimination against women, and in order to implement the principle set forth in the declaration, a convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women CEDAW was adopted. This convention is time and again described as an international bill of rights for women. It has laid down wide-ranging arrangements of rights to which all persons, including women, are eligible. Surplus means for protecting the human rights of women. Although both the genders may be victims of any of the general crime such as murder, robbery, cheating, etc., only the crimes which are focused explicitly against women are characterized as crimes against women. Various new legislations have been conveyed and amendments have been made in prevailing laws with a view to handle these crimes efficiently. These are largely characterized under two sets. First, the crimes under the Indian Penal Code IPC. First is rape, section 376 IPC. Second, kidnapping and abduction for specified purpose, section 363 to 373 IPC. Third, homicide for dowry deaths or their attempts, section 302 to 304B IPC. Fourth, torture, both mental and physical, section 498A IPC. Fifth, assault on woman with intent to outrage her modesty, section 354 IPC. Sixth, insult to the modesty of woman, section 509 IPC. Sixth, importation of girl from foreign country up to 21 years of age, section 366B IPC. The crimes under the special and local laws. Although all acts are not gender specific, the provisions of law affecting women expressively have been revised periodically and amendments carried out to keep pace with the developing requirements. The gender precise rules for which crime data are documented throughout the country are: first is the Immortal Traffic Prevention Act 1956, second, the Dowry Prohibition Act 1961, third, the Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act 1986, and fourth, the Commission of Sati Prevention Act 1987. Now, policy implementations regarding gender justice. Greater gender equality in economic opportunities contributes to stronger and more sustainable economic growth. Gender equality is also a significant driver of the degree of self-reported comfort and pleasure across the world, and life gratification rises over time as gender equality increases. In order to make sure of maintenance development, it has become imperious to be aware of the significance of the two sexes, male and female, as complementary biological entities, and moreover to respect full equity and equality of each of the two genders, which means of the social rules that men and women assumes in their lives. These roles are socio-political and cultural concepts which have progressed through history and fluctuate from one society to another. The fact that the rules attributed to men and women are not static and eternally valid, but on the contrary, that these role changes have reformed and are susceptible to further change is crucial in elucidating why the term gender is now in the forefront on the debate and why it is not interchangeable with the term sex, but it is, in fact, corresponding to it. While the sex of being is certain, the gender roles in each culture are, in the decisive study, a result of political choice. Various international organizations have passed resolutions against the gender biased issues like the United Nations Declaration and Program, Article 1G, respect for and promotion of equal rights of and opportunities for women and men. Article B9D, guarantee equality of access for women, especially girls, to education. Article B12, ensure equality between women and men. In this, A. Integration of a gender perspective into the implementation of all relevant international instruments. B. Further implementation of international instrument promoting equality between men and women. C. Implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action adopted at the 4th World Conference on Women with adequate resources and political will and through inter alia the elaboration, implementation and follow-ups of the national plans of action. D. Promote equality between women and men in economic, social and political decision making. E. Further strengthening of efforts by the relevant entities of the United Nations system for the elimination of all forms of discrimination and violence against women. F. Provision of support and assistance to women who have become victims of any forms of violence, including in the home, workplace, and during armed conflicts. Article B16J, promoting greater involvement of women in prevention and resolution of conflicts, and in particular in activities promoting a culture of peace in post conflict situations. Now, UNESCO resolutions regarding the gender equality. 28C Resolution 1.13, the elimination of discriminatory stereotypes of women. Now, 28C Resolution 4.7, Toronto and Beijing platforms for action on women and the media. 28C Resolution 5.16, UNESCO contribution to the improvement of the status of women. Now, 28C Resolution 20.5, revision of UNESCO basic test for the purpose of removing all sexist language and to ensure the use of neutral terminologies and wordings. All the same, the Indian constitutional provisions for women has provided materialistic safeguards to women directly or indirectly as under Article 14 confers on men and women equal rights and opportunities in political, economic and social sphere. Article 15 prohibits discrimination against any citizen on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, etc. Article 16 provides for equality of opportunities matter relating to employment or appointment to any office under the state. Article 39A and D mention policy security of state equality for both men and women, the right to a means of livelihood and equal pay for equal work for both men and women. Article 42 direct the state to make provision for ensuring just and humane conditions to work and maternity relief. By the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, one-third seats in Panchayat and urban local bodies were reserved for women. Amendments to Criminal Law 1983 projected a sanction which provides for a punishment of 7 years in ordinary cases and 10 years for custodial rape cases. Now, some legal provision enacted for the protection of women are as under. First is Factories Act 1948. Under this act, a woman cannot be forced to work beyond 8 hours and prohibits employment of women except between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. Next, Maternity Benefit Act 1961. A woman is entitled 12 weeks maternity leave with full wages. Next, the Dowry Prohibition Act 1961. Under the provision of this act, demand of dowry either before marriage, during marriage, and or after the marriage is an offense. Next, the Equal Remuneration Act of 1976. This act provides the same wage for equal work. It provides for the reimbursement of equivalent remunerations to both men and women employees for the identical work of analogous nature. It also disallows discrimination against women in the matter of employment. Next, the Child Marriage Restraints Act of 1976. This act increased the age for marriage of a girl to 18 years from 15 years and that of a boy to 21 years. Next, Indian Penal Code 1860, Section 354 and 509 safeguards the interest of women. Next, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act of 1971. The Act safeguards women for unnecessary and forced abortions. Next, the National Commission for Women Act 1990. The commission was set up in January 1992 to evaluate the constitutional and safeguard for women. Next, Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. This act protects women from any act, conduct, omission, commission that harms, injures, or potential to harm is to be considered as domestic violence. It protects the woman from physical, sexual, emotional, verbal, physiological, economic abuse. Beside this, on November 4, 2010, the government introduced Protection of Women Against Sexual Harassment at Workplace Bill 2010. It was proposed for guarding the women at workplace not only to women employees but also to female clients, customers, students, and research scholars in academies and universities, patients in hospitals. The bill was passed in Lok Sabha on 3rd September 2012. Now, initiatives to curtail the gender violence in India. First, National Commission for Women. In January 1982, the government established this constitutional body with an exact directive to study and observe all matters concerning to the statutory and lawful protection provided for women and to evaluate the prevailing legislation to propose amendments wherever essential, etc. Second, reservation for women in local self-government. The 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act passed in 1982 by Parliament warranted one-third of the total seats for women in all elected offices in local organizations, whether in rural areas or urban areas. Third, the National Plan of Action for the Girl Child 1991 to 2000. The strategy of action is to guarantee existence, safety and growth of a girl child with a definitive objective of building up a healthier future for the girl child. Next, the National Policy for the Empowerment of Women 2001. The Department of Women and Child Development in the Ministry of Human Resource Development has prepared a national policy for the empowerment of women in the year 2001. The objective of this policy is to generate the improvement, expansion and empowerment of women. Fifth, National Mission for Empowerment of Women 2010. The launch of the National Mission for Empowerment of Women in March 2010 is an important development that will provide the much required stimulus to a synchronized valuation of current government interventions and supporting future programs so as to transform the MPEW recommendations into reality. The mission was operationalized during 2011 and 12. Now, the summary. Gender equality can be called as the impartiality between men and women, which necessitates the idea that all human beings, both men and women, are unrestricted to develop their personal skills and make choices without the restrictions set by the stereotypes, stiff gender roles, and communisms. Gender justice can be elaborated as the safeguard and promotion of civil, political, economic, and social rights on the basis of gender equality. Gender justice necessitates that nobody should be projected to carry higher inclusive embrace or relish inclusive reduced benefits than other without due repression merely because of their sexual category. The discrimination or subordination of one gender by another is a global issue that negatively affects the social, political and economic development of every country in the world. Although all acts are not gender specific, the requirements of law affecting women explicitly have been revised from time to time and modifications carried out to keep stride with the incipient requirements. Gender equality is also an important aspect of the amount of self reported well being and happiness across the world, and life satisfaction increases over time as gender equality increases.